Well, first, real thanks to BizFed for inviting me and inviting the county to be part of this. It's such a critical discussion, and thanks to all of you for taking time out of your day to come and learn about resiliency and your businesses, because that is critical as a message you've continued to hear throughout this afternoon. I'm going to talk a little bit different scale and on a different topic slightly, but they are absolutely interrelated, and I want to make sure that we build that connection. And so really what I want to talk about is the county's sustainability plan. This is a plan that was adopted by the Board of Supervisors just 2 months ago now, and which is broad-ranging, and I'll talk about all of that and its broad-ranging nature. As in the introduction, I was not elected Chief Sustainability Officer, but appointed by the Board of Supervisors. And when the board appointed me 3 years ago, really the idea was to bring a central sort of vision and framework for how the county addresses sustainability. And one of the first tasks they gave me, besides launching our Community Choice Energy program, was to craft a countywide sustainability plan. And so we set out some goals for what that plan should be. And one of the critical elements of it is that it's regional in scope. That, the county really is the city to about a little over a million people in unincorporated parts of Los Angeles. And so most people live in an incorporated city. In fact, about the other 9 million do. And of course, 4 million live in the city of Los Angeles, and Aaron Gross was here. I don't know if he's coming back, but he's the Chief Resilience Officer for the city, which leaves 5 million people across 87 other cities, which the average size of a city is about 50 or 60,000. It's an Arcadia or a Southgate or a Calabasas. And these are where people live. And the question for the county became, how do we as the county, how can we help support all of the cities in crafting regional approaches to sustainability? And that was really one of our key goals in this planning effort. The plan itself is aspirational and long-term, it's actionable, and it's comprehensive, as I'll talk about. The areas that it covers, and when you think about what sustainability means, typically you think of the intersection of the 3 E's, environment, economy, and equity, and that's certainly the approach we took. If you look at the topic areas that the plan covers, it is traditional environmental media like water and energy and climate and parks and open space and solid waste. But we also do specifically look at and address questions around public health and well-being. We are the public health agency for the entire county. Economy and workforce is critical. We can't have a sustainable community if we don't have good sustainable jobs. And then, like any sustainability plan, and we looked at a number of them from around the country and around the world, actually, they are of the place. You can't just cookie cutter them into an area. And no one, I don't need to tell you that we suffer from a severe housing crisis in Los Angeles. And so housing and land use and transportation also became core elements. One thing in particular is that the idea of equity, that third E, really became a driving factor for how we put the plan together, and it's woven throughout the plan, as is the notion of resilience. And the city of LA with Aaron is an example where there's a resilience officer and a sustainability officer. We've sort of married those two and put resilience throughout our sustainability planning process. So I'm not going to talk too much about how we wrote the plan, just to say that before we ever put a word on the page, we went out and talked to folks, and we held over 150 meetings. We ended up talking to over some 600 individuals. We got 6,000 ideas for what the plan should contain, and that all had to be whittled down into what ultimately made it into the plan. There were all kinds of meetings, as you can imagine, if you're having 150 different meetings, including meetings with the cities and meetings with tribal nations, and across the board we were out talking to folks, including to BizFed and to BIA and to the Chamber and to all kinds of business-related organizations, nonprofits, of course, academia, town councils, the whole range. As I indicated, the plan was adopted by the Board of Supervisors 2 months ago. We got a little bit of attention to it. But what I really want to talk about is what's actually in the plan. So the plan structurally, one of the things we heard when we were out talking to people before we wrote it is that you can't really isolate these things. That, it's not you can't have an energy doesn't stand by itself. Energy affects everything else. Water affects everything else. And so, a good example of that is you think about stormwater and how we manage stormwater in the region. One of the strategies, of course, is to build more parks and open space, greening. And so now you've got a stormwater or water impact, and you've got a parks and open space benefit. Of course, if you capture that water and you can actually use it, then you need to import less. And if you import less, then you don't need to have the energy that it takes to move that water from Northern California to Southern California. So now you've got an energy impact. And if you reduce energy, of course, you reduce air pollution, climate pollution, and on and on. And so we're really looking at an integrated way. So there are 12 broad goals that are intersectional that way. Below those goals are about 37 strategies, and then below that we ended up with 159 specific actions that are included in the plan. And those came out of those ideas that we went out talking to folks. So I'm not going to read again all of the goals. You can see the way they're described. They are very high level. These are meant to be long-lasting goals for the county on a going forward basis. Some of the key areas around resiliency, which is really what I'm here to talk about today, is to think about where we can have an impact in the county on resiliency. And so, and again, a lot of these ideas, I'd say 80% of what's in the plan were ideas that were given to us by businesses and by community members and by nonprofits and through that extensive outreach process. Here you can see sort of flowing down the goal, strategy, and action kind of hierarchy. Actions around building the capacity of retailers and small stores in neighborhoods. These can serve actually as a resiliency hub in the case of a disaster. Looking at best practices for cooling centers. We operate a number of cooling centers. The city operates them. And we're going through a process to actually conduct a heat vulnerability assessment to determine where the heat is going to occur in a changing climate and who are the vulnerable populations and how do we get to those vulnerable populations. And that will help us cite and encourage access to cooling centers. We've also set some targets around the plan. So at the strategy level, there are targets. Here you can see we've got the number of people trained to community emergency response teams. These are critical, again, in a disaster, in a major disaster. You can't always rely on the city fire department, the county fire department to get to every place right away, and being able to organize within your own community is critical. And then just to give, again, a little more flavor around some of the actions. And what I'll say is this plan lives online at ourcountyla.org. And you can click on any of the topic areas, whether it's energy or water, and you can click on resilience. And so this is just a screenshot when we clicked on resilience of what kinds of actions came up. And this isn't all of them, but it gives you a flavor for the kinds of work that we're going to be doing in the county as we move to implement this plan. And you can see everything from the vulnerability assessment that I mentioned, that the heat vulnerability is part of a broader climate vulnerability. So we'll be looking at, of course, wildfire, heat, vector-borne disease, flooding, sea level rise, all of those things. looking at drinking water systems and the resiliency of our water systems, which is critical. So, again, I appreciate having been here and being invited. It's really an honor to be part of this group. And I will just say thanks for your attention, and go look at our plan at ourcountyla.org, and you can sort it and play with it as much as your heart content. Thank you.